to your crypto compliance flows and other important functionality provided by Crystal blockchain. So before we start, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this specific presentation. We'd love to hear from you during today's presentation, and if you have any question for our speakers, for me and for Kirilo, please feel free to send it through the chats tab at the bottom of your player. Make them open. So you're also allowed to send us the anonymous questions. If you have any specific questions about your project that you don't want to speak about publicly, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. We'll certainly help you. And if you please don't wait for the QA session at the end of the presentation. You can send your questions directly to the chat tab as we will be speaking, and it will be easier for us. We won't be waiting for more questions to come up at the end of the presentation. So we'll just look through them and answer to them in like 40 or 45 minutes. So while people are still joining, I'll speak a little bit about who we are. Crystal Blockchain has started as a subsidiary project of Bitfury, and Bitfury is a leading solution provider for blockchain industry. We have a headquarters in Amsterdam, and we have an office in Washington, D.C. that is specifically focused on working with the governments and law enforcement agencies. And our main clients are mostly money transmitter businesses that are operating with crypto exchanges, payment processors, banks, etc. We provide analytics for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. And let me speak a little bit about who will be presenting today. So first, I will be briefly covering the latest aspects and latest updates on the crypto regulation around the world. And I'll briefly introduce you on how blockchain analytics works in general before we'll start moving towards how Crystal specifically does it for you. And we'll be moving step by step, and we'll be reviewing how Crystal works for your compliance procedures and how it can be automatically integrated into your regular processes. We'll speak a little bit more about what recent updates have we implemented and what are the next steps for our development. And then Kirilo Chakradze, our head of product, will take the word, and he will do the live demonstration of the product to you and show you the flow with the product. And then we'll move to a QA session, but again, feel free to ask us anything. So we won't be waiting for your questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's start then. We see current situation with the crypto and blockchain industry developing and being much more noticed and identified by traditional financial markets. So as blockchain technology opens its door for enterprises, of course, we see that it comes for additional cost with both reputational and financial aspects. And of course, new ways to run the transactions are evolving constantly. And before, I would say this year or the last year, no one actually thought about the need of blockchains to be auditable day one. And of course, with the absence of regulation, it leads to disasters that, of course, play its crucial role to the adoption. And right now, it becomes more and more important for all of us to understand the source of the incoming funds and to be able to identify the risk of the funds immediately and to make an onboarding decision as fast as possible, not to lose the client, and along with that, being on the safe side with this. And two major events are happening in 2020, and all of us here should be ready for them. They require a lot of changes in your internal processes, and they also ask for much more advanced technical solutions. So first of all, we see the 5th IML directive coming into the enforced state from 10th of January 2020. And it says that cryptocurrency exchanges and providers of electronic wallets for virtual currencies are also should be qualified as an obliged actors. Additionally, the 5th IML directive requires providers to register with your local financial supervisory authorities. But the only thing that is missing in 5th IML directive is basically the exchanges who are operating without fiat currencies. But along with that, we see the long-awaited Financial Action Task Force guidance for risk-based approach. And basically, it comes into this force state in June 2020. So we have less than 1 year to actually prepare to these processes and to implement them in our internal ML policies. So basically, most important takeaways from both of these directives and guidances are as following. First of all, the risk scoring of should be done both on the customer and transaction levels. Second, you need to monitor both deposits and withdrawals. Third, you need to log details about the origination of the funds for any transaction more than 1,000 euros or dollars. And if you understand that this transaction or this wallet is connected to the illicit activity, to bad actors, you need to apply the freezing actions. Privacy coins and the entities who are allowing to transact with the privacy coins and who have a huge volume of the privacy coins are considered high-risk virtual asset service providers, the exchanges who allow this. So all of these are the quite high-level information guidelines. And of course, we expect to see much more information on this area. And basically, in next several months, we see the mutual evaluations happening in various countries. They will start in Japan in autumn, in October to be precise, and they will move forward across various countries. And with each mutual evaluation, we definitely will see much more updates and the guidance on what's going to happen there. So with all that being said, let's understand how actually we can implement all this guidance and what tools can help you to run all these processes smoothly. To understand how the tools are working, we need to look much deeper. We need to see how actually blockchain analytics can be working. Because if you would look into the general blockchain explorer, you will be confused because raw blockchain data looks not much, it doesn't give you a lot of information. It gives you certain, numbers of the wallets. It gives you hashes of the transactions, and you understand that some funds have been sent to some wallets at some certain amount of time. Basically, that is it. And then we, in Crystal Blockchain, start applying clustering to all this chaos of the transactions. So we analyze the spending patterns for these entities and for the wallets and for the transactions. And we are able to understand where wallets and transactions can be clustered, can be identified as belonging to a same potentially owner. This owner might be a company. This owner might be a person, of course, as well. So when we have done this clustering phase, next step would be to understand actually who owns which cluster. And here we start looking at the publicly operating entities, and we start mapping blockchain out and attributing actually blockchain transactions and blockchain wallets. So we try to identify actually what wallets are belonging to certain real-world entities. And again, I must emphasize that we are looking at the publicly operating companies, exchanges, payment processors, wallets, mixers, of course, and other bad actors who are publicly disclosing their wallets, and their victims, of course, understand what the wallets are. So here, after we've done the attribution, next step for us would be to apply the risk scoring models to these entities that we have mapped. So we basically analyze the internal AML KYC policy of each entity that we are reviewing. So let's say if we look at the exchange, we see, let's say, if this exchange allows you to withdraw a certain amount of funds without any AML KYC, and of course, that could not be considered as a very positive and good risk score entity. And if this exchange, let's say, has a very draconian AML KYC policies, and it's really it requires a lot of documents for each user to be provided before the registration, then of course we consider this entity as a very low risk score entity. And of course, if we look at the dark market activity, or at certain hackers, or at certain malware or ransomware, without any doubt, these entities are considered as a highest risk score entities, and they are usually marked with red. So let's look step by step how your flow or flow of your IML officer could look like if he works with Crystal directly. So basically, it all starts with adding the address, and you certainly will see this process live in our live demonstration. But basically, just by adding the address or the transaction, system will immediately provide you with the basic statistics on what this address's activity is associated with. It will provide you with the risk score, and it will explain why is this risk score so high or so low. Next step would be, let's say, if the risk score is very high, of course, you need to understand why it's so high. So the system will provide you with the visualization. This visualization is super interactive. You can build it really fast and then add new entities to this visualization. And basically, you can untangle the flow of this transaction and understand where the money came from and where are they actually going to. So each of these visualization, you can save it into the system, and you can label it as you want, and continue monitoring it as your case is evolving and continues to grow and have much more participants in it. Third step would be to actually get much more information for your internal reports. So let's say this transaction that you are analyzing right now, it could be considered a suspicious transaction. So you need to provide this suspicious transaction reports to a certain authority. And for this case, you need to explore and export the list of counterparties and with all the details about what this address was associated with. And after you have done all this, of course, you want to continue probably working on this case, or this case could be attributed to certain customer of yours. So we can add this case to the case management system and set up the trigger alert for the funds or for the wallets. In this case, system will be notifying you if the balance of certain wallets is changing or if the risk score of certain addresses is changing. Because, of course, it's extremely important for you, if you are monitoring withdrawals, to continuously see and monitor these addresses, even if they, if this customer is not with you anymore. So, of course, it's not unusual that for the withdrawals, your customers will be creating absolutely fresh and new addresses. But as time will flow, these addresses will start interacting with other entities, and their risk score inevitably will change. System will be, Crystal will be sending you updates each time the risk score will pass certain threshold. And in our case, we recommend you to pass it, to set up this threshold at 50%. Oh. And of course, you can you can apply your own risk score model to the blockchains. So basically, the idea is that certain entities and certain categories of the entities, you may think that they should not have such a high or such low risk score. So we will provide you with the functionality to change and to amend the risk score of certain categories as you would love them to be. This is extremely important depending on what regulation are you operating with. So I usually love to speak about the following example. So let's say if we look at the transaction that comes from the gambling services. If you were in Malta, let's say, this would be absolutely fine for you, of course, if the entity where it comes from has all appropriate licenses in place. But imagine that you are looking at this transaction from South Korea, and in South Korea, gambling is not permitted, it's illegal. So for South Korea, the same transaction should have much higher risk score than if you were located in Malta. So that's what it's all about, basically. Your risk score in general might be configured according to your regulatory framework. And for example, payment processors, exchanges, and other projects and other companies with a high load of incoming and outgoing transactions, for them, ML compliance could be super tricky because, of course, we understand that you won't be able to make immediate decision and also have zero false positives. And specifically for you, we have developed a flow which can be easily integrated in your processes with our REST API. So you can make immediate onboarding decisions for your clients. So first of all, you configure your risk score model according to your regulatory framework. And after you have done this, every time when user sends you funds, Crystal immediately checks the transaction risk score and returns the result back to your system. And let's say if you see that the risk score is more than 50%, then the source of the funds definitely needs to be double checked. So another endpoint returns the result back to your system and delivers this information to you. If your risk score is extremely high, you can immediately block the transaction or freeze the funds on your side. And same goes the withdrawals, just as I explained a little bit earlier. You just keep add the address automatically to our monitoring feature, monitoring function, and system will be just sending you an escalating case if the risk score will be going to an extremely high parameters. So this is the overview of the development that we have been brought to life for Crystal over the course of last 6 months. We have been developing very, very fast, and all these functions, they follow and they are super in line with what new regulation requires from you. So we right now have the automated wallet tracking. We support Bitcoin, Ethereum, ERC20, ERC721 cryptocurrencies. We have the risk activity notifications. We have the case management, and on the upcoming quarters for the next 6 months, we're going to release new functionality, which will include Litecoin, Tether support, corporate account support, and much more improvements for your automation. Because we, of course, understand that a lot of you expect to grow a lot over the next several months. So we provide as much functionality for you to integrate Crystal as a baseline, as a base layer to your processes, and to bring more automation to your internal AML KYC. So right now, I think that's the good moment to pass the word to Kirilo to show you the product itself. Thank you for your questions. I do see several of them. While Kirilo will be demonstrating the product, I'll review them, and I will certainly come back to them with the Q&A session right after the demonstration. Let me stop sharing the screen. Kirilo, floor is yours.
Thanks, Marina. So I hope you see my screen where I'm showing our Explorer tool. Yeah, it's an interface of our tool, and basically we divide our product into 4 functional sections. The first one is dashboard, where all your activity is being stored, and then Explorer tool, where I'm right now, and monitor feature, which is more in use for some investigations and compliance officers, and then tracking tool, which very useful when you need to understand where all Bitcoins have ended up during your investigations. I'll be covering all of them during my demo, and let me start from Explorer, where I'm just showing you just a very basic of it, where you are able to see a Bitcoin exchange rate and distribution of miners in terms of how many blocks were mined during predefined time frame. Of course, you can adjust it by your own, and you can play with it a little. And I should say that I'll be showcasing just very nutshell of the product, and without any specific links to certain workflows of our customers. And if you are in any interest of our product, please send us a request, and we'll be showing you some specific demo which will be able to help you in your workflow particularly. So let me start with some investigation with some address. I hope this demo flow will explain you how Crystal can be used in your pipelines and how it can be used in order to speed up your processes and your investigations regarding cryptocurrencies. So I have an address, and I've seen several questions regarding how clustering how clustering works, and what you see here. I'll tell about it a little bit more. So what you see on another page is some basic statistics like final balance, amount of money sent and received, risk score, which Marina mentioned before, and owner, whether it's defined. And what can be here? Here can be, first of all, a name of some real-world institution. For instance, it can be a kind of Coinbase or any other exchange, or mixing service, or darknet marketplace, and so on and so forth. But also there can be a numeric value, which means that we were able to find out more addresses associated with this the same owner. So it probably means that there are several other addresses which were created by the same person or by the same organization. And let me check. I've seen a question. Let me do it in a demo, in a live demo pipeline. So I've seen a question which was related to which exchange does this address belong to, and there was an address. I'm just gonna put it in the search bar and let me check it. Yeah, according to our clustering algorithms, we can say that this address belongs to Coinbase, most probably. Yeah, and I hope this answers your question quite definitely. So yeah, let's come back to our address, which I started with, and what you see here is a risk score. Again, we are providing capabilities to our customers to adjust risk rules, and you are the only person who is setting up risk rules, who is setting up the initial risks. For instance, you can set up gambling with 0% risk score if you are sure that gambling is legal in your country. Or if you are not sure, in some exchanges, in some certain exchanges, you can set up a higher risk score for them, and then our algorithms are doing their job. And basically, our algorithm, machine learning, is behind our risk score algorithm, and it's quite comprehensive stuff. And if you need more details of how this risk score is computed, please feel free to contact us, and we'll send you a document which explains a lot on this matter. So below to the very basic information about Bitcoin address, we can see a transaction and input, output, and balance history, and all the transactions that this address was participating in. And of course, the very useful feature that we call connections, which allows to understand which entities this address was interacting with. And we divide it into our different types of services. There are gamblings, darknet marketplaces, exchanges, online wallets, and so on. And below we provide a list of all such entities, and you can filter by clicking on this block, and only entities with the type exchange will be present here. And then let's go to some entity from this list. For instance, local Bitcoins is a very good exchange for doing some examples on this. And you see that we were able to identify almost 6 million addresses associated with local Bitcoins, and we provide balance with regard to this certain entity. Of course, we provide type of the service. We regard this entity as an exchange, and risk score. According to my risk rules, local Bitcoins has 50% risk, because local Bitcoins doesn't do any KYC and AML procedures, and therefore it can be used for money laundering or any legal activity. For instance, as you may see on Connections tab, there are more than 3% of funds came from darknet marketplaces. And in order to understand what were the particular marketplaces, again, you can click on this line, and below you are able to see all darknet entities that were sending or receiving money from this from local bitcoins. Of course, you can adjust by amount of money received and sent, by number of transactions made between those two entities, by first interaction or last interaction as well. And if you are in any interest with regard to particular interaction between, for instance, local bitcoins or Silk Road, you can go to more. You can explore more by clicking on this interaction icon. And now I was moved to direct in particular interaction between local bitcoins and Silk Road, and we provide some basic statistics: how many funds were sent and received, average per day, total amount of transactions, and average number of transactions per day. Interaction graph, interaction chart is also here. You can adjust it by your own, according to your needs. And yeah, so you can also play with the filters. For instance, if you're looking for just biggest amounts of transactions, you can apply filters here, and you see that only transactions with amount more than 15 bitcoins are present here. And then if you have found a transaction you need to investigate, you can go to the visualization tool, and I've just clicked on icon which moved me to visualization tool. And what you see here is an interface of this tool where circles represent addresses and lines represent transactions. And yeah, this three lines under the dot means that there are more inputs or outputs in this particular transaction. And I've just added all inputs and outputs, and this graph means that three addresses which belong to local bitcoins sent some amount of money to 6 addresses with several owners. There are Agora, Silk Road 2.0, Evolution, and gambling service Free Bitcoin. And again, these signs, these icons inside the circles mean type of services. Legend can be found here. For instance, this $sign means that this address belongs to some exchange. This gun sign means that this address belongs to some darknet marketplace. And of course, you can explore a lot by clicking plus, which means you can explore next transaction, next time step, where money were sent to, or you can use another control element, for instance, this time step, and you see that at the end of the day, some money have ended up on 4 different darknet marketplaces, one exchange, BTC, which was seized by United States government 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, you can play with it a lot, and you can, click until the very beginning of certain bitcoins, and you are able to even understand who has mined some certain bitcoins in the very beginning. But if you are investigating a case where you need to understand where some particular bitcoins have ended up, what was the point of withdrawal for a certain transaction, we have designed a tool which perform this tracking automatically given the initial set of transactions to track. And what you need is just set of transactions or set of addresses. And for instance, I have some in my, just put it into this box, and I can click Setup Tracking button, and I'll be moved to the page for computing. But this computation takes some time, And I'm going to show you how the results may look like with regard to a very well-known case, WannaCry ransomware attack. This is an attack which took place in May 2017, where a lot of hundreds of thousands of computers in more than 150 countries were infected, and hackers demanded ransom payments by encrypting data on those computers. And hackers collected around 50 bitcoins, and then they have made 6 transactions in order to withdraw all their money. And we can set up tracking for all of them. You can see that there are 6 transactions, and all of them were transactions initiated by hackers in order to start the process of withdrawal. And the result of tracking was pretty simple. We have identified 3 entities which received money from these hackers. It's a well-known case, and there were changes shaped in BTC. Now all of them have changed their KYC policies in order to avoid these cases, such cases as WannaCry case. But back in 2017, you see that KYC policies were not very, in use for even such huge players as Changelly, Shapeshift, and HitBTC. And by the end of the day, you should need to use Monitor in order to, kind of analyze huge amount of transactions if you're an exchange, or to set up activity notifications when you are doing some investigation. And with this regard, we provide a tool which can send you notifications in real time once something has happened with your address of your interest. For instance, you can add an address here and create a case where you can adjust. You can set up some activity notification settings, and if you need to receive emails when something will be happening with this address, you can click on the email notification box, and then you will provide with an email that something has happened with this address. And also, when this address of your interest will become more risky, you can choose to be notified on this matter as well. And you can monitor set of transactions. You can analyze data. You can regarding to some certain amount of your transactions. If you're an exchange, you may need to somehow to manage all your inputs and outputs, and to check risks, whether you need to understand whether some transactions are risky or not. And for this, we have developed transactions analyzing a tool which helps you to analyze transactions in a very easy way. Just you can add just a hash of transaction or CSV, whatever you want, and this helps you to manage all the risks very fast and very easy. And of course, everything can be automated. Everything that you have seen on the internet can be automated via API, and therefore it can be easily integrated through your workflow. And you will be able to optimize your pipeline work and not spend a lot of time analyzing Bitcoin blockchain or Bitcoin blockchain or Ethereum blockchain. So I think that's probably from my side, and I see some questions here.
Yeah, I think we can move to the questions at this moment. And let me just stop sharing the screen. Okay. So thank you so much for your questions. We'll be answering them together, and I'll be I'll be answering them for everyone, yeah, because they're quite interesting. So the first question is, do you mean that eventually you will link to addresses if one user needs to create a new one? So basically, the idea is that when the user creates a new address, which should not get directed to anything else, of course, we're not able to attribute it to any cluster. So it needs to start sending funds somewhere, and it needs to have history behind it. And only when it starts, of course, we can attribute this to the cluster. And of course, it is possible to create addresses and by one person create addresses, and they will distribute to separate clusters to keep specifically mindful of this and keep them absolutely not connected with each other. That is possible.
I'd like to elaborate more on how clustering works. Sometimes it's very hard to understand whom it belongs to when this address hasn't sent any funds yet, but we are analyzing a lot of patterns from the blockchain, and sometimes we can say that some this address may belong to several of the same owner. So as a baseline, two main heuristics which were described in a lot of articles, and one of such heuristics is a companion heuristic which says that when several addresses are sending money, and when several addresses are in the same set of inputs, most probably they belong to the same owner, because you need to manage all private keys of certain addresses to send money and spend funds, which are related to these addresses. Of course, there might be some cases when there's a case joint transactions and so on, but in most cases this heuristic works well. And in the second case, heuristic helps to understand two-block clustering is a change heuristic when tools that should understand and should be able to understand where in the set of outputs where is it to change address. And it can be possible to do some rules, machine learning rules, and that's what it is doing. It's basically.
Thank you, Carlo. And moving to the next question. If you end up finding a mind identity that doesn't give you real life identity, what are the changes that you might find out your real life identity? So, answer voice and then right, yeah, the answer is that. So, basically, we are attributing and mapping out the addresses to publicly oriented entities. We are following three main cohorts of these entities. So, first of all, we're interested in publicly oriented entities like exchanges, payment providers, wallets, and we analyze them ourselves. So, eventually, our analytic team gets to address. And we're pretty good with covering currently active operating public entities, and I must say that we are able to understand and identify on blockchain more than 90% of currently active companies or sending funds. And second target would be the dark market activity and other activity which is happening. And here, of course, it depends on on the activity of certain clusters and something that got seized by enforcement activities, law enforcement. So yeah, it depends on time, of course, and it's also works if our customers send us certain clusters and ask us specifically to find out who this cluster belongs to. What company it belongs to, and we certainly can spend some time and understand if we're able to identify the company or the activity behind it. And the target for us is malware and ransomware, which sometimes, a lot of times, it works as an MLM pyramid, and we need to be able to run this malware or collaborators who run this malware and this. And of course, again, it's a matter of time. Next question. Let's say that one address has only one, two transactions, then how to close? Yeah, I think Pirlo has answered this, and we can move forward. Next question. How do you practice assess MIC procedures of the changes while assigning the risk for them? So we actually look at several parameters because that depends on the entity that we are analyzing. But basically, it's very easy accessible when you start registering on the exchange and you see what kind of documentation it asks for, what kind of licenses does the exchange have, where it is registered, where it is incorporated. So by combining all this together and mapping it out to current regulatory framework for this specific area where it's incorporated, we are able to understand and assess the MLCC procedures and assign the risk for this particular entity. It will become more complicated with the gambling services, let's say, where you will need to track the licenses in place, and because they need to renew them, of course. But well, for any entity that we observe, we need to constantly check their current state. Next question. Does the system provide average of transactions that we compare our stats to? Well, you can look at the huge clusters and understand the average of the transactions in huge clusters. So you can look at the Coinbase cluster, which consists of several, like 40 or something like that, million of addresses, and to see how it looks like. So depending on your goal, if you are an entity, you need to understand if it's normal, the amount of activity, target activity, illicit activity you have, the funds associated with this activity, or you need to do something like this. Basically, you can compare these two existing clusters. Kirill, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have any other option to see this information through the system, general statistics.
Well, you can upload a bunch of data, a bunch of transactions in monitor tool, and just to make some basic some statistics on overall amount or overall risk or something like that. I'm not sure that I'm very good at understanding this question correctly, but probably if I get it right, you can use monitor to explore.
Okay, very well. So can we watch the video of the webinar again later? We will be sharing the deck, definitely, and regarding the webinar, we are going to have more functionality to be released literally in the next several days. So we think we'll be updating the video with the new functionality, and then we'll put some parts of this maybe on the website, maybe on the YouTube. Where you definitely can see what our system is capable of is our YouTube. You can check on YouTube Bitfury, and there we put the videos about the investigations we've been doing. And the latest investigation video that we have published covers the Safe exchange hack, the Japanese exchange. And it has a lot of functionality in there, and we usually prefer to share the video about the interfaces in this way. But we'll certainly be doing this kind of webinars again and again, and